you just said you're from Winchester, and then how old are you? And how would you like define yourself as an artist or what you do within the industry? Because I know that you're into both classical music, but you like dabble in mixing hip hop with like composing and classical music. So how would you describe that?
Yeah, I'm 31 and I'm a singer and producer and I mean I was a classical composer. I still am, but that was sort of the main thing I did for most of my youth and then I got interested in hip hop and um yeah, I mean I'm trying to be like a pop star. And then
Very good.
you use that platform to try to do some stuff that I think is interesting with classical music later in
Yeah,
life, I guess. I just thought it would just be nice to have a platform to do it based off of what
yeah.
I would work. And then I've obviously like produced and done like string arrangements for a lot of artists in hip hop and actually pop too. But so, Kanye, Travis Scott, Big Sean, Ty Dolla Sign, I don't know, a bunch of others.
So when you were when you were home and
Yeah.
growing up, did you dabble in like, were you super into the classical music that like Boston has to offer? Or were you more of, did it not come until,
Yeah,
um,
no, that was exactly like what I was doing, and I
okay,
wasn't really listening to like hip hop or pop music at all at the time. When I was a kid and in high school and stuff, I was just like, yeah, I was going to like the Boston Symphony and shit,
yeah. So
and
strictly
I
classical
did,
music.
yeah, and like Broadway, that type of stuff too. And I did like, yeah, like I studied composition and stuff on weekends at New England Conservatory on Huntington in Boston.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, and then in the summer I used to go to this place called Tanglewood, which is like a classical music festival in Western Mass and Lenox, Mass. Actually, yeah,
So you didn't go, did you go to college or did you just go to high school and then
yeah.
study?
I went to college. Yeah, I went to Yale and just did
Yeah. Okay.
classical, full classical. Yeah,
And you studied classical music there?
yeah.
Damn, that's impressive.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's tight, but yeah, I think like I mean, like I'm obviously older than most people that I like sort of are kind of where I'm at or the artists that I'm sort of fan of, but well, not all, but
Do you feel like moving to LA was like the changing point in your career? Or do you feel like it was like somebody you worked with or a connection that you made, or like what do you feel like was like the flip of the switch to where you really um like things took off for you? Or you just felt more confident within like your musical
yeah,
abilities?
yeah. Well, it's been like a few stages, but I did this concert like a few years after moving to LA that was called Beethoven, which was like mashing up Kanye and Beethoven with a
Yeah,
live
I
orchestra.
was gonna
Obviously, like
ask you
that's
about that.
yeah, obviously that's not going to be most people's path, but because I was coming from classical and I'm interested in like expanding the audience of contemporary like classical music like that, that was an interesting experiment. I actually did that with my friend Yuga Kohler, who I knew from Boston as well. Like we went to like classical music stuff together in high school. So now so that we did that in LA and then we did it in New York. And after that concert, I feel like is when I first like that's when I connected with Mike Dean, which is how I met Kanye and how I worked on Astroworld. And then it's also how um, I met Vic Mensa through one of his managers had a friend who was at Beethoven, and they introduced me to him, David Appleton. And then through Vic, I met like No ID, and No ID, I met like Big Sean, so like all these other people. So I feel like that, yeah, like that show was. It's just like I mean, obviously, like I said, most people are probably not gonna be able to do that type of thing. It's just like I had a really unique background that led me to do that, but I
Yeah,
do think I do think that having like a calling card like that, like having a thing that I did that I could point to before I had these like collaborations with these bigger artists, um, just being able to, so that I could go into a session, they could be like, "Yo, oh, he like this is the kid who did that crazy Beethoven thing I showed you." Like that was how
yeah,
I was introduced to people first. So it's just like,
yeah,
and now it's like, oh, this is Johan. He worked with like Kanye, blah blah. It's like people need some way to be like, well, this is that dope person. So
yes,
I feel like even if folks are just trying to be a producer or a songwriter, sometimes like it's worth say like releasing your own music sometimes and just because it's like maybe one of your own songs takes off and then suddenly all these artists want to work with you. Like, and I mean, my focus is trying to be an artist, but I just think even if you're trying to be a producer, like I think more and more producers are realizing that like if you put out some of your own stuff too, like that could be a way to, it's like advertising, you know.
Yeah, of course. What was the first uh big song or artist that you worked with and helped compose or produce or add strings
Yeah,
or orchestra
yeah.
to?
I mean, it depends how big we're talking, but like Vic Mensa was definitely like the first sort of pretty well known artist that I worked with, and
Artist.
yeah, and he was like, I think now I kind of like I'll work with artists, like do a few sessions and kind of like it fits into the rest of my schedule of just doing a wide range of stuff. But because that was like the first dude that I really built that relationship with, I put like a ton of time into just working with him because I didn't have anybody else exciting that I was working with, kind of thing. And then through him, I met a ton of people. So I feel like that helped a lot. And so it was like there was like 2 years where I was just kind of like doing sessions with him every night and his crew and shit. And then before him, there was like, you know who Mr. Hudson is? He's like featured on a bunch of Kanye records. So like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I already knew him before like it was actually through him that I met Vic's manager, like indirectly. But so he like same thing with him. Like I was working with him. I met him just through music industry people, but like I was just doing sessions with him every day, even though like most of that music never came out.
I know you've done a ton of like orchestra and string stuff for like you did the Coffee Bean with Travis Scott. Were you working in the studio with him or do you usually um like edit or make your like produce and then send it out to the artist or
The
manager?
artists, like I never met Travis. That was just through Mike Dean, who I've worked
Okay.
with in person a bunch. Other, like Big Sean, all that stuff I did in person with him though. Like Vic's, was in person. Kanye, I met a couple times, but I never met like Tiana or Nas, even though those are the albums I worked on. It's just like kind of
Yeah.
random. I've been working
And
with
then
like,
you were in the studio with Big Sean working on Detroit too, right? Because you did the single again, you did
yeah, I did a bunch of stuff with him. I mean, with
yeah,
most of these artists, it's like you work on like 20 songs and only like 3 of them actually come out. But yeah, it was
yeah.
Deep
There's a good amount
Reverence,
on Deep
Dawn
Reverence and then Dawn
Life,
Life.
and
Yeah.
there's another one too. I think it's called Everything That's Missing or something like that. Yeah, I mean, there's like a
Um
whole crew of people, like sort of like Stiz works with this dude, Lil Rich, who's like a producer. Lil
that's his
Rich
producer,
works
yeah.
with, yeah.
And
So I work, and then through them, I know like this dude is Z's the Shake, who's got his own project, and he's from New Hampshire, but he's doing Boston shit. But they're all out here, and he works with BS, so they all know each other, and it's all in this one.
yeah,
Like I feel like it's not uncommon for me to go to the studio and like be like 10 people, and every single person's from Massachusetts.
I feel like
There's
it's
this
like the
dude
place to be.
Quaco who like writes for this shit. I don't know if he still does, but it was called Fresh Out the Mint, which is like a Boston music blog or some shit. And then, and he had like I don't know what it was, like event series or something in LA, but it was called Boss Angeles.
Like when you first moved there, this is just had like personal question. Did you feel like you were like kind of like at a loss at what to do, or did you like when you went out there, were you like already had everything lined up, or did you just kind of wing it and just went out?
What I did was I took like a 1 week trip out here. Um, and then like in that week, that was probably like the hardest I've like ever hustled, was like sort of the 2 weeks before that week, just to make sure I would like, because it's expensive to fly across the country, I mean, at
Yeah.
least if you have no money, it is, so like that, I wanted to just take full advantage of that week. And so I think I had like 8 or 10 random ass meetings and real like random shit, like just anyone who seemed like they were involved with anything going on within the music industry. And most of them led nowhere, but like one of them led to another one the same week. And that's the one that like, that dude is this dude Andrew Gould, who's actually from Leominster. That probably was a
Wow.
part of it, honestly. Like I think he probably was just like, oh, sick, like Boston, like.
Yeah.
And he,
Andrew Gold, you said?
yeah, Gould. He worked at BMG, which is a publisher. Then he moved to Downtown Publishing, and now I think he's starting his own kind of situation. But yeah, so he was like the first dude that really set up like mad opportunities for me. And then
Yeah.
so that was the first week, and then he was just like, oh well, you got to come back out here. So then I came back out like a month later for like 2 weeks, and that went pretty well. And then I came out for like 6 weeks, like like a couple months after that, and then the fourth trip I just was a one way.